Public Law 112-239, January 2nd, 2013, 126 Stat 1957. The General Authorization, Section 501A. The Secretary and the Broadcasting Board of Governors are authorized to use funds appropriated or otherwise made available for public diplomacy, information programs to provide for the preparation, dissemination, and use of information intended for foreign audiences abroad about the United States, its people, and its policies through press, publications, radio, motion pictures, the internet, and other information media, including social media, and through information centers, instructors, and other direct or indirect means of communication. Section 208, Clarification on Domestic Distribution of Program Material. Section B, Rule of Construction. Nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit the Department of State or the Broadcasting Board of Governors from engaging in any medium or form of communication, either directly or indirectly, because a United States domestic audience is or may be thereby exposed to program material, or based on a presumption of such exposure. Such material may be made available within the United States and disseminated, when appropriate, pursuant to Sections 502 and 1005 of the United States Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948, 22 U.S.C. 1462 and 1437, except that nothing in this section may be construed to authorize the Department of State or the Broadcasting Board of Governors to disseminate within the United States any program material prepared for dissemination abroad on or before the effective date of Section 1078 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2013. Welcome to the NDAA 2013. The groundwork is being laid. Flash forward to July 2013. Out of foreign policy, the U.S. repeals propaganda ban, spreads government-made news to Americans. For decades, a so-called anti-propaganda law prevented the U.S. government's mammoth broadcasting arm from delivering programming to American audiences, which of course led into House Resolution 5736, otherwise known as the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012, which legalized propaganda to be broadcast here within these United States, and signed into law by 44. December 2016, out of Zero Hedge, Obama quietly signs the Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act into law. Our enemies are using foreign propaganda and disinformation against us and our allies, and so far the U.S. government has been asleep at the wheel. But today, with this bill, now law, we are finally signaling that enough is enough. And within that article, we get to find out about the NDAA of 2017 underneath Senate Bill 2943. In conjunction, we find out about House Resolution 5181, otherwise known as the Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act of 2016, also brought up in the Senate under 2692, called the Countering Information Act of 2016. All brought to us by the combination of the Portman-Murphy. The bill promotes the coordinated strategy to defend America, allies against propaganda and disinformation from Russia and China and others. And just like that, the U.S. Ministry of Truth is officially born. Well, not to be outdone, we gotta get big tech involved, right? Flash forward into September 2017. Why is Google hiring thousands of journalists to flood newsrooms around America? Well, I think we know the answer to that. It's a rhetorical question. And of course, Facebook to invest $300 million to help local news survive. All of that leading into the Communications Decency Act, otherwise known as Section 230 that we all know and love, 47 U.S. Code Section 230, protection for private blocking and screening of offensive material. A lot in the news about that here lately, and whether or not big tech can actually hide behind that, right? Flash forward into September 2019, out of Breitbart, Facebook, in court filings defending itself from a lawsuit filed by activist and congressional candidate Laura Loomer, has cited its First Amendment right as a publisher, contradicting public claims by the company that its a social media service is a platform. Whoops. And of course, not to be outdone, Judicial Watch has this. Most of Facebook's censorship board has ties to left-wing billionaire George Soros. It's time to wake up, America. Our First Amendment is, has, and continues to be under assault. Realize, realize, realize. This has been a PSA by Breaking Spectre. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Spectre here on the Breaking Spectre channel. Almost forgot which channel I was on here. Been bouncing back and forth for so long here. Another edition of Midnight Rider here this afternoon. Doing a midday afternoon edition here after coming off 5x5 last night. Doing a little bit more discussions on the old COVID business, the adverse reactions. If you missed it, you can check it out over there. Soko and I did a show there. But today, focus I want to look at here is on the economy and what has been playing out here since, probably about mid last week when we had the ADP jobs report. On Friday, we had the government print, which was a huge miss, and we're going to get into that here this afternoon and some of the fallout since. So that's what we've got in store this afternoon. So that being said, appreciate you guys tuning in. Sorry for the long intro today. Had a little bit of connectivity issues, but it looks like DLive is back up and clicking on all cylinders. So thank you if you're over on DLive, if you're over on Twitch, good to see you. YouTube, good to have you aboard. Over on the Tiger Network, good to have you aboard over there as well. And of course, not to be outdone, we've got Trovo Live and Vaughn Live. If you're over there, get established. Broadcasting over there as well. Alright, that being said, let's just get into it here. Like I said, today we're going to get into the old dollar stores, and there are issues with trying to retain help at this point. Dollar General, Chipotle, McDonald's all having issues retaining employees. Now they demand $15 an hour. And of course, in the meantime, old Uncle Sam is paying people to sit on their rear ends and do nothing. And of course, we're going to get into that here this afternoon. So let's back it up here. A few days ago, actually back toward the front of the month, says entire Dollar General store closes after the staff quits over lousy pay. So apparently they thought, well, it's much better to quit than bother driving to work, having to deal with the hassle of long hours and actually getting a paycheck. And never mind the fact that Uncle Sam and your state robs you of your pay via taxes and everything else. So, there's that. But angry Dollar General employees at a store located in a small town of Elliott, situated in New York County, Maine, plastered handwritten notes on the front entrance sliding door of the store that read, "They reached their breaking point of long hours and crappy pay." As a result, the employees walked off the job, and of course, the store closed. Facebook user Bree Blanchett had her smartphone handy and snapped a picture of the handwritten notes before they were ripped down, and they'll go through all four of these here. One note says, "Google, general strike, and learn how we can take our power back. To our loyal customers who treat us with respect. Thank you, we love you." Another said, "Closed indefinitely because Dollar General doesn't pay a living wage or treat their employees with respect. Read more. Upset employees at Dollar General store in Maine quit in unison." And this former employee blamed capitalism. Of course, it's capitalism's fault because they're probably an expert in that. "Capitalism will destroy this country. If you don't pay people enough to live their lives, why should they slave away for you?" And a comment on Blanchett's Facebook post appears to be a former employee of the store who explained, "My manager was working 70-plus hours a week. We're getting paid for 40 salaried with no days off. I was supposed to be working 20 hours a week, but they needed me working 31 with 1 day off a week." Another former employee told local news, WMTW, "I decided to quit because I was no longer going to take the abuse the Dollar General was giving us. As the day progressed, I got even more upset. So upset with long hours and low pay, the employees were barely scraping by, living underneath the poverty line, figuring that they could make a stand against corporate America. So why now? Well, that's a great question. Perhaps, and thanks to the Biden administration, people are getting paid more to sit on their couch and play Xbox or trade meme stocks and crypto. And of course, these workers will likely file for unemployment and other benefits to receive stimulus checks in a much higher amount than their sub $10 an hour at the Dollar General. It's not just labor shortage companies are dealing with today. The threat of workers walking off the job is rising. WMTW has since reported the store has reopened. So, yes, there is that. Crappy pay. And yes, it's obviously capitalism's fault because I'm sure the economist, the expert economist this person is, quickly realizes that capitalism works when there's no intervention with you and whoever you're wishing to trade goods and or services with. It is the very fact that there is this extra entity involved by way of good old Uncle Sam and your respective states and everything else that they decide they want to take out for your good, right? And give back to you at a later time. Basically bribe you with your own money, right? Every time you file your taxes with the old IRS. So, again, highlighting that, we'll jump over to what the Redditors had to say about old Chipotle. They, too, kind of in the same boat here. Redditors were right. Chipotle increases wages to average $15 per hour. Now, if you remember right, it was just only, I think the last episode here that I covered the fact that Biden and company were going to try and shoot for $15 an hour, but I don't think that they have the support among the Dems. So chances are they're going to back off it. So what's likely going to happen is this, and I think we're seeing this play out on the low end. Obviously, $10 isn't enough for these guys to scrape by with, so you're going to see a push from the bottom. Bottom up, top down, squeeze the middle. That's the old playbook, right? And so here's what we're going to see. We're going to see these guys basically demand $15 an hour, and chances are they may actually get it. And unfortunately, what's likely going to happen in their respective cases is automation will just take their place because it's going to be cheaper to automate than use humans. And so, yes, there will be one or two people who get $15 an hour, but in the meantime, management will lay 3 people off, because they have to make money too. So anyway, updating this as of 9:05 yesterday, Redditors on Chipotle Mexican Grill, subreddit Chipotle, were absolutely right over the weekend when current employees said there will be a big press conference on Monday. This being yesterday, Chipotle announced it would increase restaurant wages on Monday morning, resulting in a $15 average hourly wage by the end of June. The press release went on to say general manager positions could earn as much as $100K a year. Additional details of hourly and salaried restaurant employees' wage increases will be rolled out later this month. It said hourly crew members' starting wages range from $11 to $18 per hour. And it says we noted Sunday multiple Chipotle restaurants across the U.S. were shuttered or working on limited hours as employees walked off the job over low pay. They're taking advantage of stimulus checks via the Biden administration that pays more to sit at home than work. And of course, just like the case we saw over at Dollar General, taking a page out of their playbook, want to know why we are closed? Well, here, follow all this. It says Chipotle has proposed introducing a $200 employee referral bonus for crew members and a $750 referral bonus for apprentices or general managers to address the labor shortage. Chipotle's announcement comes on the heels of fast food workers across the country walking off the job in protest of low wages. And McDonald's workers in 15 cities are expected to strike on May 19th. I'm going to cover that here in a moment. Ahead of the company's annual shareholder meeting, workers say they're not being paid a fair wage. Of course not. And that's the theme in a Biden economy, where sitting at home collecting government checks yields more money than working, forcing companies to raise wages that will ultimately increase product or service costs and be pushed to consumers. So much for the transitory inflation spike we see today. It's something that will be sticking around for quite some time. So again, not capitalism's fault. It's the intervention of the government, and of course the fact that we have a fiat currency brought to us by, the private banksters known as the Federal Reserve, which is neither federal nor a reserve. Thanks to the robust vaccine distribution and more states easing pandemic restrictions, on top of a labor shortage sparked by the Biden administration's generous stimulus checks, disincentivizing people to work while collecting free money from the government, restaurants, large and small, are grappling with a lack of workers. Hudson Riley, the senior vice president for research at the National Restaurant Association, recently warned that the restaurant industry is facing unprecedented levels of hiring difficulties. And when it comes to recruiting workforce, on January, 7% of restaurant operators rated recruitment and retention of the workforce as their top challenge. By April, that number had risen to 57%, Riley told Epoch Times. It says with fewer people in the workforce, the stimulus supports still in place, worker safety concerns, the need for caregivers to remain at home, and much greater competition with the other industries for workers, operators are returning to pre-pandemic recruitment techniques for hiring, he said. The latest restaurant chain to experience a possible labor shortage is Chipotle. Unconfirmed reports on Chipotle Mexican Grill, or Chipotle, have cited moderators of the Reddit forum are deleting posts about an alleged conference call on Friday addressing pay raises set to be announced Monday. The plan is to increase the pay of workers to address the labor shortage. And just to let y'all know, Chipotle is warning everyone to take down posts about the new announcement or you can get fired. They're doing a press release Monday, and until then, they want everyone quiet, one Redditor said. And supposedly, here's some of the post net from Chipotle in that regard. And of course, here's some of the signage net. We demand change, overworked and underpaid, of course. And of course, we've talked about this ad nauseum in the past and some of the other financial segments net that I've done. But hey, what do you expect when, it doesn't take rocket science to do these jobs. It's not a high-skilled job that should necessarily be a living wage. Usually these are kind of leapfrog jobs net that only should get you by, at least back in my day, that's how it used to be, until you improved your skill sets and actually warranted a higher pay for whatever job or skill set or degree or what have you that you were going to get into, whatever profession. But of course, I suppose when you go to college for some ridiculous curricula that has no future, what do you expect, right? At the end of the day, they're probably going to go right back into the service industry. And of course, McDonald's, not to be outdone, says workers set to strike for the higher wages ahead of shareholders' meeting, as we just briefly alluded to in the previous article. Says the full-blown labor shortage in the U.S. is about to get a lot worse as McDonald's cashiers and cooks in 15 U.S. cities will strike later this month, demanding an increase of at least $15 per hour. You're starting to sense a theme here, folks. Coordinated effort. Gee, I wonder who's putting all these folks up to $15 an hour. Where's that messaging coming from? If Congress can't get it done, old Biden can't get it done, somebody has got to be delivering the message to the front lines, don't you think? McDonald's employees at fast food shops across Los Angeles, Oakland, Sacramento, Miami, Tampa, Orlando, Chicago, Detroit, Flint, Kansas City, St. Louis, Raleigh-Durham, Charleston, Houston, and Milwaukee are all planning to strike on May 19th, one day before the company's annual shareholders meeting, according to Motherboard. And here's the whole banner out there. It says, we know McDonald's is gathering for a shareholder meeting to discuss what straws we use, what bags we use, how much we get paid. Terrence Wise, a McDonald's manager in Kansas City, Missouri, told Motherboard, the one thing that's missing is our voice. Wise continued, we made them that $5 billion in profit last year. There wouldn't be shares to divide if we weren't making burgers and McFlurries. Our message to shareholders on May 19th is, you don't have to wait on legislation. You can pay us $15 an hour now. That should be the floor. And here you see the old fight for 15 moniker, and that apparently that's a thing over on Twitter. All right, there you go. Says this comes as some McDonald's stores have become desperate for employees, offering them money for just showing up to an interview and or signing bonuses. In a bizarro economy run by the Biden administration, unleashing trillions of dollars in stimmy checks to unemployed Americans who are making more money sitting on their ass than having a job, a massive labor shortage has materialized across various labor-intensive industries. And I sincerely like this meme here. Say, hey, we're hiring. Got old Ronald McDonald on the old bicycle, stick in hand. $10 an hour, no benefits? Whoops. Oh, nobody wants to work. The humor of it all. Says McDonald's told Motherboard that wage laws depend on the federal government and local municipalities and not the company. Our first responsibility is the hard-working restaurant crew, and we respect and appreciate their dedication to serve millions of customers daily, a statement from McDonald's said. It's the responsibility of federal and local government to set minimum wage, and we're open to dialogue so that any changes meet the needs of thousands of hardworking restaurant employees and the 2,000 McDonald's independent owner-operators who run small businesses. Across the country, customers are reporting some McDonald's are short-staffed, with signs that read, we are short-staffed. Please be patient with the staff that did show up. No one wants to work anymore. Sad day. McDonald's CEO Chris Kempczinski and President Joseph Erlinger recently suggested wage increases could be on the horizon. Republican lawmakers are blaming the labor shortages on stimmy checks, while Dems blame it on the fear of returning to work in a virus pandemic. Overweight Americans on May 19th seeking a Big Mac, large fry, and a McFlurry will have to look elsewhere for their fast food cravings because of the multi-city strike. It says fast food workers must understand their jobs will be displaced by automation and artificial intelligence in the coming years. So stop demanding higher wages and retrain in another industry less prone to a robot takeover. But again, obviously this is capitalism's fault because, hey, these corporations that make these billions of dollars, they can afford to pay us these higher wages. Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. But the one caveat, unlike the unicorn businesses and that you see on Wall Street, usually corporations and businesses, when they go into business to provide a good or service, has to earn a profit. And if they don't do that, they won't be in business very long. And again, not like Netflix or anything like that that loses money, or Uber or Lyft or any of those folks who have the old backdoor dark money in that shoveled in to keep them propped up. But the traditional folks who have started a business will know that if you do not make money, you're not going to be in business very long. And of course, along with that, if you pay your folks more, guess what else has to go up with that? The cost that you're going to pass on to the consumer. So, all right, well, how long is that going to work if the wages net are flatline for those who buy your goods and services? So, it's a perpetual cycle, right? And of course, this is all brought to us by the old Federal Reserve. So, and of course, I've highlighted this in the past as well. Well, commodities are going one direction at this point. Corn up, copper is up. Aluminum up, lumber is up. This is a Bloomberg chart here from recent days talking about all the commodities. So it's no surprise, yes, that $15 an hour is on the horizon. However, why stop there? Why don't they shoot for $20 an hour? Why don't they shoot for $25 an hour? Why 15? You know, they're going to feel the pinch just like everybody else. How did they arrive at 15? And why are we not seeing gold and silver rise similarly at this point? Do you think they're being suppressed in the marketplace? Well, we'll talk a little bit about that, but shocking chart shows most workers now make more on unemployment than from their jobs. And this came out yesterday. Zero Hedge says almost a decade ago we explained that America had become a bizarre kind of welfare state where, due to the premeditated vagaries of the tax code, hard work was punished. And by the way, I'll pause right there and say this isn't the only country where this is happening, because if you paid attention to what's going on in Israel, aside of the bombings and back and forth that have lately been going on, but here recently it was found out that obviously for conditions of them returning to normal in their society, obviously they have to get vaxxed and probably passported up and everything else. But they're facing a similar scenario where people don't want to return back to work. And it's like, all right, if nobody wants to work and people are just going to get paid by the government, what's the point of work? How is this supposed to work? How is anything supposed to get done at this point? So it's not just here in the old good old US of A where this is actually occurring. As a reminder, back in 2012, we showed that it was increasingly lucrative in the form of actual disposable income to do the bare minimum, receive minimum wage, and collect various welfare entitlements, then to work hard and aspire to a higher socioeconomic status. This was graphically and very painfully confirmed in the below chart that Gary Alexander, Secretary of Public Welfare, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, a state best known for its broke capital Harrisburg, and as quantified and explained by Alexander, the single mom is better off earning gross income of $29,000 with $57,327 in net income and benefits than to earn gross income of $69,000 with net income and benefits of $57,045. All right, so let's take a look at this graphically, I suppose. We'll blow this open. So basically what it's showing, the household income and benefits chart. If we stack on welfare benefits, you can quickly see what happens. Welfare cliffs crop up in several spots. So there's the highest one at around, looks like about 30,000. We see that again around, maybe 45,000, and again probably right around 55,000. And so here you see CHIP, MA, childcare, energy, housing, food, cash, negative income tax, earned income minus taxes, all these various colors now piling on, which gives this credence as a single mom is better off earning gross income of $29,000 with $57,327 in net income and benefits than to earn gross income of $69,000 with net income and benefits of $57,045. So let that sink in. In any case, it says fast forward to today when, thanks to Biden's trillions, which, as we reported a month ago, have sparked a historic labor shortage, any, not just hard, work is punished, and instead America's great unwashed masses are rewarded to do absolutely nothing. Of course, the Biden admin will never admit to a full-blown socialist takeover of the labor force by the government's handouts, and instead is blaming the collapse and people looking for jobs on such intangibles as fear of COVID, mothers staying at home, and who knows what else. All of that is pure garbage. For the real reason answer, listen to the Chamber of Commerce, which last week urged an end to Biden's pandemic handouts, as paying people not to work is dampening what should be a stronger jobs market and is hurting the overall recovery. Or listen to the NFIB chief, economist Bill Dunkelberg, who said that small business owners are competing with the pandemic and increased unemployment benefits that are keeping some workers out of the labor force. Or listen to restaurant legend Wolfgang Puck, who said, "I don't think we should pay people to stay home and not work if there are jobs available." Or listen to the National Owners Association, an independent group of McDonald's franchisees, which sent a letter to its members on Sunday that blamed hiring challenges on the perverse effects of the current unemployment benefits, and said, when people can make more staying at home than going to work, they will stay at home. It's that simple. We don't blame them. We fault the system. But even if one is willing to dismiss all the above as partisan criticism of the divine socialist regime of Joseph the Ancient, one just has to listen to what the paragon of democratic, liberal, progressive values and ideals, Steve Ratner, best known as counselor to the Secretary of the Treasury, leading the Obama administration, and the man who single-handedly overturned bankruptcy law in the Chapter 11 case of General Motors, who today tweeted that with enhanced benefits, workers, take Pennsylvania for example, can now make more on unemployment than they did at their jobs. Coming from a Democrat, this was the most damning assessment of Biden's catastrophic fiscal policy to date. But what was even more shocking is a chart that Ratner tweeted similar to our chart from 2012, and it shows that as of this moment, tens of millions of U.S. workers in jobs ranging from dishwasher to hotel clerk to preschool teacher to anyone on minimum wage can now earn more from unemployment than their regular job. And here's the breakdown right here. I'll blow this up. So minimum wage, basically here's your regular wage on the left, and on unemployment, basically if you're making minimum wage $7.25, basically if you're down around that range, you're getting about $11.23 based on the old stimmy checks net coming out. Dishwasher, same case. Hotel clerk, same case. Preschool, getting pretty close. Light truck driver, you just barely eke out. It's almost more beneficial to wait for that stimmy check and play Xbox. Dental assistant, slightly better, and median wage of about $20 an hour versus $17.78. And again, the Bureau of Labor Statistics out of Pennsylvania is what fed the data here. So, says, why would any rational person work under such generous welfare conditions? Or, as Noah correctly put it, when people can make more staying at home than going back to work, they will stay at home. It's that simple. We don't blame them. We fault the system. So, again, it just highlights the fact that at the end of the day, the government is ready, willing, and able, per all this COVID business, to hand you back money that they don't have, print it out of thin air, and say, you know what, well, we're going to be real generous to you here, and we'll give you this nice $600 scraps off the table from Nancy Antoinette. And that's all it is. Why do they stop at $600? Why don't they make it $10,000? Why don't they make it $100,000? You know, if they're just printing stuff out of thin air, what difference at this point does it make? What the size of the check is, right? That would be the question that I have, but this is what socialism starts with. And hey, by the way, look at what good old Newsom is going to try and do. Sneak a fast one in over in California while he's trying to be recalled and thinks that he's going to entice the populace of California and say, oh, well, guess what? Well, you're getting that $600 from good old Uncle Sam. Well, I'm going to do you one better. Good old Uncle Newsom here is going to add some more icing on the cake and provide you a little extra flavor and say, here's an extra few $100s on top of that. Just don't worry about that little recall effort thing. We'll provide it. Where's all this money coming from, folks? It's printed out of thin air. What did old Margaret Thatcher say about socialism? Right? At the end of the day, it only works until you run out of other people's money. And that's exactly what they're doing here. All right, that being said, so where are the actual jobs at this point? Who's building? Who's doing what? Well, consequently, the dollar stores are dominating U.S. retail store openings, which Dollar General is leading the pack here according to the chart, with almost 1,035 new stores planned, or opened, I guess, rather, through April 30th of this year. The wildly uneven U.S. economic recovery since the virus pandemic began in early 2020 has given rise to dangerous levels of inequality, otherwise known as the K-shaped recovery. The K represents an immediate recovery for the rich, but continued economic hardships for the working poor. Payrolls are still millions of jobs short of pre-COVID levels, and millions of others continue collecting stimmy checks. Corporate America understands this souring picture and has found a way to capitalize on an increasingly larger population of working poor Americans by opening a flurry of dollar stores around the country. Coresight Research, a firm that focuses on retail and technology companies, reports about 45% of the almost 3,600 store openings of large chains in the U.S. this year are from Dollar General, Dollar Tree, and Family Dollar. So there you see them, the top 1, 2, 3. Dollar General with about 1,035, about another, it looks to be not quite 400 out of Dollar Tree, and Family Dollar with almost 200 before you start getting into Five Below, Casey's General Store, Aldi's, Burlington, Signet Jewelers, Tractor Supply, and Aerie, I guess. Some of the other stores that they're planning to open. The pandemic resulted in millions of Americans who instantly fell into poverty and will remain there as the economy is short 8 million jobs from pre-COVID levels. Many of these folks enjoy the high life, collecting Biden stimmy checks with minimal incentive to find a job. And here we see the shortage. Says corporate America understands the dynamics at play as failed fiscal and monetary policies could not lift all boats. Anyone who owns stocks, bonds, real estate, classic cars, fine art, wine, and anything else of value saw incredible valuation gains over the past year. As those without assets, the working poor, saw very little financial improvements besides a few government stimmy checks, aka scraps off of Nancy Antoinette's table. This means that millions of folks in a pre-COVID world who shopped at middle to upper class shops can no longer afford and have migrated to low-income dollar stores for survival. Corporate America is capitalizing on this trend by expanding these stores at a very fast clip. We've seen a bifurcation in the economy, said Ken Venio, the president and head of advisory and research at Coresight. So while the wealthy have done well and continue to do well since the Great Recession, there's certainly a lot of the population that has not done as well. The dollar stores appeal strongly to that segment of the population, and that's probably the overriding reason we see for the growth in the format. The recent surge of new dollar stores across the country is indicative not of a robust recovery, but one that is extremely uneven, benefiting a handful at the expense of the many, with deep residual scarring that may last a generation. And of course, that's only as good to open those stores if they can keep workers. And like the leadoff story where I said, hey, the whole stinking store workers decided to quit because, hey, $15 me, bro. What do you expect? So even though they may try to open 1,000 stores, does not necessarily mean that they'll be able to staff 1,000 stores. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. And of course, this came out today. Nobody wants to work. Job openings soared a record high of 8.1 million, smashing Wall Street expectations. This is in case we need more proof that the U.S. labor market is in a supply-demand mismatch crisis. A few hours after the latest NFIB showed that it has never been more difficult for small business to fill job openings, moments ago, the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, confirmed what we expected, that the number of job openings in March, recall JOLTS is 1 month delayed, soared by a massive 597,000 to 8.123 million in March from an upward revised 7.5 million in February, and the highest on record. So there you see that. Total job openings net. This dating all the way back to, looks like about 2001. And of course, we followed that through, recession time, 2007, 2008, up, and away. A little drop off, and voila, here we are. Says the actual number was a 6 sigma beat to already lofty expectations of a 7.5 million print. And here we see the 6 sigma beat, and that's what they're talking about per JOLTS here today. Says looking at the details, the increase in job openings was driven by industries with the largest increases in accommodation and food services, about 185,000, state and local government education, with about 155,000, and arts, entertainment, and recreation, another 81,000. The number of job openings decreased in healthcare and social assistance. That was down by about 218,000. The number of job openings increased the most in the Northeast and Midwest regions. Separately, and yet another indication of the record surge in demand for labor since the collapse last April, when there was 18.1 million more unemployed workers than there are job openings, the biggest gap on record. The gap has since shrunk dramatically to just 2.6 million in February, down from 3.2 million in January. Yes, despite the COVID shock, there are just 1.6 million more unemployed people than there are job openings. As a result, there have been even more continued improvements in the job availability series, and in March there were 1.19 unemployed workers for every job opening, down from 1.35 in February and from 4.6 at the peak crisis moment last April. It says, meanwhile, confirming the accelerating in the hiring picture as COVID lockdowns were lifted, in March hiring surged for a third consecutive month to just over 6 million, up 215,000 from 5.794 million in February. And according to the BLS, hires increased in state and local government education, up 62,000, educational services up 31,000, and mining and logging up about 17,000. Curiously, as hires soared, the number and rate of total separations actually declined by 107,000 to 5.322 million. The total separations levels decreased in construction, down 82,000, and in state and local government education, down 25,000. Finally, confirming the overheating in the labor market sparked by Biden's trillions and the tsunami of unemployment benefits, which has prompted a wave of revulsion toward work in general. In March, the level of quits, or people leaving their jobs voluntarily due to better prospects elsewhere, rose by 125,000 to 3.5 million after rising by 77,000 in the previous month. The number of quits increased in accommodation and food services, 63,000, and in information, 16,000. Quits decreased in state and local government education, down about 19,000. So there you have it, per JOLTS here today. 8.1, the number of job openings net that are out there waiting for people to go grab, and yet they're not being filled. You got the service industry especially highlighting the fact that, hey, we can't get people in here. We can't pay them to come in and get interviewed for a stinking job, even with all sorts of incentives. And so here we sit. And so it begs a question. You know, I put this out there on Friday after this report came through. It says, literally shocking data. April payrolls miss huge, just 266,000 jobs added below expectations of 1 million. Again, this was after the ADP print and that came out on Wednesday last week, the government says, and the expectation was it was going to be between 1 million, 2 million per all the banksters, and it was far short of that. So my thoughts were these, says, well, is there more to this story other than Americans sitting at home with stimmy checks in hand? So my thoughts were, number one, you got woke corporations. The corporatocracy can't get people to work for them. Perhaps it's their ideology. I'm not trying to scapegoat them here. But at the end of the day, is it possible that some of the folks not sitting at home are far smarter than we think? And that, hey, they realize, all these corporations now who have come against us for election integrity and everything else, why should we go work for them regardless of what they're paying us if we're going to have to acquiesce to their ideology? Would you? Just for a check? Something to think about. Number two, COVID BS mandates must have negative tests, 97% false positives, jabbed, EAU jabs unproven, fake efficacy, vax passes, 1984 has arrived. Well, is it possible that a lot of these places that are hiring may require some of the COVID business behind the scenes? Oh, before you can work here, you got to have the COVID pass, you got to be jabbed, you got to have negative tests. What about that? How many people are going to buy into that just for a paycheck? Just a thought. And number three, what about the Federal Reserve debt notes? A dollar that has lost almost all of its purchasing power after $3 trillion in printing dollars out of thin air. Again, I covered this here a couple shows ago, highlighting the fact that Fred M$3 in circulation have gone up since probably January, February last year when the whole COVID business started, right? We put about an extra $3 trillion in circulation, which reduces the purchasing power of the actual dollar that we have in our pockets. And so people may look at that and say, you know what? Why should I go work for a dollar at this point? I can't really buy anything with it. We're seeing inflation through the roof. You might try to pay me $15 an hour, but it's like chasing yourself on a spinning wheel, right? What's the point? Why not wait for something better to come along? Or perhaps somebody can trade me goods or services or pay me in gold or silver bullion or crypto or something along those lines. So I don't know necessarily that the stimmy checks are the only sole thing at fault here, but something to mull over nonetheless. So that's what I'll leave it with here today. And we'll have to see how this plays out. Obviously, there's going to be more to the story. Maybe we'll get some of those questions net answered that I propose right there. We'll have to see. But, all of this is going to come to a head at some point. We're seeing inflation through the roof on every single commodity. Whether or not you choose to believe that this colonial pipeline business has been manufactured, drummed up, whatever, one has to also consider, right, this on the heels of what we just saw back in February after the storm hit Texas and the EO that Joe Biden put out, that basically he gave carte blanche to outside interference into our energy systems, aka China, right? And lo and behold, what did we see? Texas pretty well wiped out, power down across the state. But hey, they're going to build a wind farm right next to an Air Force base. That makes total sense. So again, is this colonial pipeline business manufactured? Is it meant to drive up prices? Is it meant to drive panic and fear and keep people in panic and everything else? Again, we'll have to see. So lots going on. Pay attention. Stay alert. Stay wise. Obviously, do whatever you can to prepare for the uncertainty ahead. Seeds, gardening, whatever, in order to counter what is coming at us, because we are certainly in the storm. So that is going to do it for this broadcast. We'll see you back here shortly on the next. Got a lot more to say and a couple other topics, talking about Gates here coming up. Got a lot of material on that. A lot of stuff going on there. So stay tuned. We'll see you back on the next one. Take care. God bless everybody.